Hey, greetings from Texas. On the last couple of shooting videos, I had people ask questions. Do I shoot with one eye, um, grip, things like that. So I thought I'd just go ahead and do a video on basic fundamentals of shooting a pistol. I'm a big advocate of dry fire practice. Um, ammo's expensive, but you can eliminate 90% of your training needs at home with a unloaded gun before you get to the range. So when you're getting to the range, you're just concentrating on the finer points of shooting, such as sight picture and trigger press and follow through. So I'm going to go over the 5 basic fundamentals of good pistol shooting. The first being your stance. The second, and I think the most important in a combat situation, is your grip. Next would be sight picture. The fourth would be trigger press, keeping that sight on the target while you're pressing the trigger, and follow through. And keeping that gun on the target as you're releasing the trigger and the bullets heading down range. So if you can master these 5 fundamentals, your shooting will greatly increase. When you go to the range, you want to take every opportunity you can as a training opportunity. Loading the magazine, how you stand. If you're going to stand there and load your weapon, load it in your shooting stance. When you load your magazines, load it how you're going to load it in combat, and load your weapon like you would in combat. For instance, I have an unloaded CZ75. So if you're at the range and you're loading your magazine, don't be down here like this. You're missing a training opportunity. Get this gun up in your workspace. I'm in my shooting stance. Assume your shooting stance. You're training yourself. Insert your magazine in your workspace. Don't be down here. If you're training for self-defense, get these fundamentals ingrained, get this muscle memory ingrained. So when I'm loading at the range, I'm looking at my adversary, I'm loading my weapon, and then I'm charging it. Okay, that's a training opportunity you're missing by at the range. You're sitting down here and loading your magazine. Load your magazine in your shooting stance in your workspace. So I'm looking at my items. At the same time, I'm keeping my eye on any adversary. So when you're loading, you're loading your gun. Doesn't matter when you're doing it. Get it up in your workspace, okay? And charge your weapon properly. All right, so let's go over the basic fundamentals. For purposes of instruction, I'm going to use this training aid, training gun. All right, first off, let's start off with the stance. All right, we're all built differently. We're all ergonomically different. When I shoot, my training is more geared towards self-defense or combat. So bear that in mind. So when I'm in a fight, I want to be balanced. I don't want my feet parallel. Okay, it's easy to push you off balance. What I'm gonna want is a fighting stance or a boxing stance. So my strong foot is either quartering or having my weak foot, okay? My legs are gonna be slightly bent, like if you were snow skiing. All right, you got natural shock absorbers here. And that way, if I'm hit, I'm in balance. And when you're in a gunfight, it's a fight. So you want to be balanced. All right. So what you want to do is find your position that feels comfortable for you. Get a sight picture. Close your eyes for 5 seconds and open them. If you've drifted off right or left, shift your feet accordingly. So if I'm drifting off to the right, I might just need to shuffle my right foot up, and keep doing that until every time you open your eyes, your gun is still on target. All right? So there's not that much magic about the stance. in real combat, you're not going to get a chance to pick your stance or take that time. You're going to be shooting in awkward positions. So the next fundamental, the grip, I feel is the most important. Other than that, you know, once you get your shooting stance, you want to develop that. And again, when you're at the range, whenever you're manipulating your weapon, get off that bench and stand in your shooting stance. Let that become second nature and build that muscle memory. Okay, the next issue is, let me digress a little bit. Let's talk about the eyes, okay, because that's not part of the 5 fundamentals. Which eye do you use? So number one is, what is your master eye? And I'll ask you these questions. If you're going to be in a boxing match, if you are going to throw darts or any other activity, throw a baseball, do you use one eye or do you use 2 eyes? I use 2 eyes, but your body will automatically use your master eye. So how do you determine your master eye? Well, one is just with both eyes open, look at an object and put your index finger, cover that object. If I close my left eye and my finger doesn't move off that object, that's going to be my master eye. Now close your right eye. If your right eye is your master eye, your finger is going to move off that object. So that's how you determine your master eye. Really, the master eye, using a single eye, would be more for target shooting, particularly with a rifle. But even with a rifle, especially with the AR or AKs, I keep both eyes open. Okay, let's get down to grip. This is where I see people have the most problem. The way I like to think about it, 60% of my grip is with my non-shooting hand. So I'm going to get in my stance. Once I get my grip, this is how I do my grip. I take my support hand and put it at a 45-degree angle and grab the weapon like this. Okay, my thumb is in line with the target. And the way I could best illustrate that is look at an object and point at it with your finger. Okay, so when I look down my finger, I could see 99% of the time, if you're normal, you're going to be right on that target. So when I'm combat shooting, my support hand thumb is pointing at the target. So I don't have time to use my sights. I'm just basically coming up and pointing my thumb at that target, bringing that sight up to my line of sight. But we're getting up to the sight picture. So if you want to get a good grip, grab the gun just like this. I got my finger wrapped around the trigger, and my thumb is riding along the lower slide. Okay, and I'm at a basically 45-degree angle. Now I'm going to come up with my shooting hand and establish my main grip. So I'm going to release my left hand. Okay, and I want the tang. I want my hand to be as high on the tang as I can, and this will get the center of gravity even as close as possible to the force, which is going to be the slide going back and forth. On a revolver, it's going to be different, but most automatic weapons, semi-automatic, will have this tang. Okay, I'm indexing my finger until I'm ready to shoot. So come back here now. You see this space here? I'm going to come up with my hand, and what I want to do is make contact with as much of the pistol as I can with my non-shooting hand, my support hand. So you see this area here, it's just perfect. All right, and by wrapping my finger or around the front of the trigger guard, you can see here how much contact I have with my hand, and see how my hands are overlaid. I see a lot of people shooting like that. Well, look at that space. Okay, and this is going to be very important with controlling rapid fire and recoil. This hand is going to keep you on target, left or right. If you're a right-handed shooter, the path of least resistance is going to be up and to the right. Okay, but you're using this hand to keep it there. Once you get your grip, you're going to push the gun up and out to your line of sight, and you want your head up. You don't want to be down. You don't want to be looking at the stars. You want to be looking directly at the target, the center mass of your target. And as you're coming out, okay, see the position of my hand? This thumb is resting on that hand. You're going to push up to your line of sight, and that's when you bring your finger onto the trigger and press it. So you're pushing the gun out to your line of sight, onto the target, and when that front sight hits your point of impact or where you're focused, that's when you press the trigger. On smaller guns, this is a high point 9mm compact. See this groove? They put that there for a reason. Okay, and that's so you can get more purchase on the weapon. All right, see how much of the gun surface? I have almost 90% of this surface covered with the exception of the slide. Okay, and that is what's going to control that recoil. Your grip, your shooting grip, should just be firm. The tighter you make your grip, the more it's going to affect it. If you're bear down on this, it's going to affect your ability to press that trigger smoothly. Okay, and then we'll talk about it on trigger control. So, to get your grip, just take your gun with your non-shooting hand, pass it over to this hand until you establish the shooting hand grip, and then bring in this hand and fill in all that void. Again, my thumb is pointed at the target. So in a life or death situation, you're not going to have time to line those sights up, but you just want to be where you're looking. Hopefully that makes sense. And if you have any questions or comments, you know, engage. Leave those questions down below. Okay, I have a video on how to properly load or put a pistol in the battery. You should grab, I need to take that out. Anyway, you should grab the slide like this and just pull it back. If you have trouble with the strength, push with your shooting hand. Push it forward out of your hand, okay? Grabbing it up here is, I don't like it. It's not advisable. Number one, if you're covering the ejection port and for some reason you have an empty, you're going to prevent it from coming out. Tossing it back in, you'll end up with a double feed. You may have an optic dot sight. It may not be reliable up there, but anyway, this is, I see people do this. It's not a way I advise. It is a way you can do it. But if you go follow the analogy of good, better, best, the best way is to do how this was designed. That's why these serrations are here. Just charge your pistol just like that. All right, now is the trigger press. When you're shooting a group, you can tell whether or not you have too much finger in the trigger or not enough finger in the trigger. If you have too much finger in the trigger, you can have a tendency to pull the gun. If you're not pulling the trigger straight back, you have a tendency to pull it off to the right. Okay? If you're shooting kind of grouping to the left, you may have too little trigger finger in, so when you're pulling the trigger back, you're kind of pushing the gun to the left. If you're shooting low or you suddenly group low right or left, you're probably jerking the trigger. All right, so when you pull the trigger, you are trying to pull the finger back straight as you can until the gun goes off. When you are first starting, do not release the trigger. Give it a 1,000 count, wait till the bullet hits the paper, and then slowly release your trigger forward. Okay, I don't know if you can hear this. Okay, and the slide's going to go back when you fire. And then you let it forward until you hear the reset. Okay, now the trigger can go forward even further, but why on your next shot have to take up all that slack? You're already at the wall of the trigger, and there you go. Same thing, the gun's gonna go off, your shot's gonna go, count 1001, let that trigger forward till you hear the reset. And that'll prevent you from jerking the trigger, okay? Don't let your finger fly off the trigger. I see a lot of people, all right, they're letting the trigger travel all the way forward. You don't need to do that, okay? Press the trigger. Okay, I have the center of the pad of my finger on the trigger. The gun's gonna go off, and then I'm gonna let my trigger go forward till I hear that reset. After a while, you'll develop that muscle memory, and you're gonna find out that you can fire the trigger or press the trigger quicker and get your subsequent shot off faster. All right, so I'm gonna leave that here for now. Sorry, I got a lot of mosquitoes and no-see-ums out here. But anyway, as far as the trigger control, that's pretty much it. Don't let that trigger fly forward. Hold that trigger back after your shot. Ease it forward until you hear the reset. Okay, so I'm gonna end it here. I don't wanna make this too long. The next two fundamentals are gonna be sight, picture, and follow through. And follow through I kind of covered that, but that's the follow through. There's follow through in everything, any type of throwing sport, bowling, darts, bow and arrow. There's always a follow through with it. And if you adhere to the follow through with the trigger, then you're gonna get a lot better shots in grouping. All right, I hope you got something from that. If not, or you have any comments, leave them down below. My bio as far as firearms goes, there's a very brief. I have way more training than what's in my on my about tab. You can kind of see the experience that I have, and hopefully that'll give me some credibility. Also, watching some of the shooting that I'm doing, maybe you'll pick up some things. So anyway, I hope you learned something. I appreciate you stopping by, and thanks for watching.